Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rav Shmuel, with this week's 10-minute Torah. And this week's portion is Ki Teitzei, when you go out. So, first of all, when you come in to the synagogue, okay, so we're still asking people to observe social distancing, be very careful. People are very worried about the Delta variant of COVID. Now they're talking about a Lambda variant, all these different strains that are coming, being given the Greek letters to identify them. And, we want to keep people safe. As it turns out now, Salichot, which was planned on being both live and broadcast on Zoom, is now only going to be broadcast on Zoom. The good news is that I'm going to save money on gas. The bad news is that we're not going to be together, and we all want to be together, right? So what we have to do is we have to be real careful, right? Take precautions. Do what you have to do. I know that there's a big political upheaval about, do these people want control? These people want control. Who's saying what? You know what, folks? It's such a convoluted world today. We're just trying to get along. We want to make sense. Take steps to check things out. Like I talked about in my sermon. We want to do the right thing. We want to take steps to do the right thing. So there it is. I do want to also continue thanking the people that show up for Saturday morning services. We have a million plus. It's wonderful looking out there and seeing 20 people and having the problem of who to pick, not how many, if there's enough, but who gets to come up and who doesn't. We do our best to make sure that everybody who wants to participate in the service gets to participate in the service, which means that I get to sit on the bima while other people do the Torah reading. Don't get me wrong. If it were up to me, I would read the Torah from now until the cows come home, literally. But it's more of a pleasure for me as a rabbi to see people want to get involved and want to read directly from the Torah, and people that can, and the fact that we have so many resources. I am so looking forward to the high holidays, which are coming up pretty quick. Salichot's 2 weeks away, folks. Rosh Hashanah, sorry to interfere with your Labor Day holiday, but you're going to be very spiritually involved. We're going to do our best to make it as meaningful as possible. Okay, enough wasted time. Let's talk about Ki Teitzei. Now, in my mind, going over this Parsha a few times, this is a women's rights Parsha. So it first opens up with the situation, Ki Teitzei, when you go out for war, when a man goes out to war and sees an alien woman and he looks at her and has physical feelings for her, there is a process. Now, the process is not don't, because that's not realistic. As much as we'd like to restrain and refrain, when men go out to war, they're feeling real powerful. They need to. The adrenaline's pumping. You need that when you're fighting life and death, right? So a lot of other things tend to happen as well. And one of them is that a man feels like a man. He sees a woman, he wants the woman. And what the Torah says is, if you want that woman badly enough, now this is where the sages are split on their interpretation. Some of the sages say that a man can have her, for lack of that's a euphemism, once. Other sages say no, not yet. But the Torah says there is a waiting period of 30 days. You take the woman home. She gets to mourn or grieve, depending on the situation. She does not take steps to look attractive. And then after 30 days, if the man still wants her, she becomes his wife in every sense of the word. She becomes Jewish. And she is entitled to all the advantages, all the rights as the wife of a Jewish man. Now, there also follows, and I'm just going to touch on this briefly because I want to get into this whole women's thing. What happens after that is that they talk about if a man has two wives, one is loved, one is not so loved, and if the not so loved one has the first child, that child is the heir. That child is the firstborn. The man can't say, well, it's not my favorite wife. So, no, you don't get to do that. The firstborn is the firstborn and gets the double share, the double portion that's entitled to the firstborn son. They also talk about the wayward and rebellious son and what happens there. Now, there is a progression in Torah. And in this particular portion, again, it's a laundry list of a lot of commandments. And it's seemingly random, but there is a flow. There is a flow to the Torah. And in this case, these first three parts of this portion talk about a man that finds that is attracted to a woman, and a woman becomes his wife who was not raised Jewish. So she's not used to those morals and ethics that Jews are supposed to be that we get inculcated from early on, because we all go to Hebrew school, we all study Torah to one degree or another, and we learn Jewish morality. This woman has not. She's just brought in and she becomes Jewish, and she might still have some pagan or idolatrous thinking that goes along with that. So she doesn't raise a son, perhaps the way a native born Jewish person would, being more familiar with that morality. So what happens is that you end up having a son who gives into his lusts and his urges and steals money to do this. And they say, wow, this kid is going to grow up and be an absolute terror. Now, the penalty for this is capital punishment. And the sages tell us that this was never carried out. There are so many hoops to jump through that it was never done. You just didn't have all the hoops jumped through. So it was never carried out. But the point is, it's a warning. Okay? There are other issues in this portion about respecting women. For example, a man marries a woman, and we know that in the ideal, of course, today's a different world, in the ideal, the woman that he marries is not supposed to have had a relationship, a physical relationship, a sexual relationship with another man. Now, of course, there are circumstances when, you marry a widow or a divorcee. That's different, of course. But a woman says, I've never had a relationship with a man. The man and the woman start having sexual relationships. And he says, wait a minute, something's wrong here. I don't think this woman was pure when I married her. The parents then bring any proof that they have, and some parents save the proof. I'm not going to go into what the proof is. Use your imagination. This is a PG rated discussion, okay? But they bring whatever proof they have. And if they prove that, yes, indeed, the woman was pure when she married him, at that point, that's it. Okay? Case closed. Now, we know that in modern day society, when somebody's accused, even if they are found innocent, even after all the evidence has been presented, even after everybody gets to talk and the person is deemed, no, they didn't do it, there's still that pall of guilt. Somehow they got away with it. Because if they didn't do it in the first place, why was there a suspicion? In this case, and happens in other times, right? When a woman, the bitter waters, right? When a woman is accused of adultery because she was seen together with a man, not her husband, and people saw that they had an opportunity to be alone together, and she drinks the bitter waters and she is cleared. At that point, and at this point too, the man does not bring up this again. They go on as if it never happened. Very important. The woman is vindicated. Likewise, they also talk about what happens if a woman has a relationship with a man. Of course, if there's two consenting adults, both of them are married, both of them face capital punishment, because it was very important in that time, as it is now, that we instill morality in a world that had no morality, where other cultures thought it was okay to sacrifice children so the wind doesn't blow too hard. Crazy stuff. Okay. So yeah, we Jews are held to a higher standard. Some people say that's why the world looks at us. You got all this nonsense going on in other parts of the world, and yet they focus on Israel. Why? Because we're held to a higher standard, because we are who we are. Okay. However, if the woman is attacked, and she is out, and she happens to be outside of town, and there was nobody to rescue her, then she is completely vindicated. Completely vindicated. The man is held responsible for attacking her. Also contrary to what some other cultures believe. Finally, in terms of divorce. If a man has a wife and they're not getting along, he gives her a decree, a divorce decree, that is today known as get, because the gimel and the tet, the two words that make up, are not found together in most words. A couple of words in Hebrew they're found together. Other than that, they're not. So a get, and they get separated, they get divorced, they go on, they have other relationships. They can never be married again. It's not like, well, now that I've gotten over it. No, it doesn't happen. Likewise, if a woman is married to a man who dies without leaving an heir, it's up to the brother-in-law, her brother-in-law, to impregnate her and have an heir. Now the question comes up, what if that man is already married? I don't have an answer for you yet. I'll have to go through it, maybe when the Talmud will talk about it. Okay? But if the man decides not to do it, he is disgraced. So I want to leave you with this. This portion contains issues about women where women are respected. Okay? Think about it. Me Too movement. Shabbat Shalom. See you in services.